Shame on! Game over!
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for February 19th, 2024, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brennan Cassidy.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this review conversation. I hope you have your webs ready because we're going to be slinging some arrows on this one, I'm sure.
Webs out, not knives out, but our webs are out on this one.
Webs out. Looking into the future for this conversation. I think if you were to channel your inner Madam Web, you'll probably be able to see where this conversation is going to go.
I mean, if I could channel my inner Madam Web, I wouldn't have seen the movie in the first place.
Well, I guess to be fair, Rotten Tomatoes did tell us, did foreshadow what we were about to get into.
Rotten Tomatoes, schmott and potatoes.
And look, I agree. Rotten Tomatoes isn't necessarily indicative of anything, but when it's under 10%, and the last I saw, I think it was hovering around 7%.
Yeah, it's dropping.
That's not great.
Well, and the Metascore being somewhere around like the high 20s, I think, which is even low for these kind of standards. Yeah. And apparently some article exists out there, I forget who published it, that it may have been Regal or some other theater chain that were actually seeing diminishing returns in their ticket sales in real time because people were asking for refunds after seeing this movie.
Oh my God. Can you do that after you see the movie?
I don't know. Maybe they were leaving midway through or something. I mean, who knows? You come up with some type of excuse, you can probably get a refund.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm certainly sure of it. I mean, I could understand walking out part of the way through or midway through.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have the gall to sit through an entire movie and then ask for your money back. I mean, sometimes you see bad movies. That's okay.
That's your choice. You put up the money. You made the choice to see it. You gotta own it.
All the way to the end.
Yeah.
You got your money's worth, whether you liked it or not.
You paid for a movie. You weren't paying for a good movie.
Exactly. You paid for an experience, and you got that. You sat there for 2+ hours, or however long this movie is.
That's like eating a terrible meal, but finishing it and then asking for your money back.
Yeah. No, that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Not how it works. At any rate, yes, we're here to talk about Madam Web, the latest in Sony's Marvel Spider-Verse, however we're calling this.
I don't even know if Sony knows how to call it what it is yet. I don't even know if they know what they have in their hands. I don't really know either.
Do we know definitively if these movies are in the MCU? I know they've teased that. They've indicated that at times. Like, what was it? The Venom post-credits teaser at the end of the last one seemed to really allude to that Venom is at least in the MCU.
Like I said, I don't even think Sony knows what they're doing with this. Because then didn't Adrian Toomes show up in Morbius as well?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Which I admittedly have not seen yet.
Yeah, neither have I.
Actually, I take that back. I did see Morbius, but that was a post-credits thing, right?
I don't know. I know he was in the trailer.
Or maybe I just started the film and didn't finish it because I don't really remember seeing him in that movie.
I wonder if those who did see the movie would not blame you for that action.
Yeah, because I don't really remember seeing that element. I absolutely recall people talking about it, but
yeah.
I don't remember that scene specifically. I don't think I've seen it. So either it's a post-credits thing that I just skipped entirely, or I just didn't finish the movie. And I would totally believe that as well. So
I mean, I know you're prone to do that. If you didn't really enjoy a movie, you tend to leave before the post-credit scene even starts. You didn't even know there was a post-credit scene in Argyle until I told you what it was.
Definitely did not. I mean, Morbius is something I caught up at home anyway.
Sure.
I did not go to see that in the theater. I was watching that on Amazon Prime. So maybe I just stopped halfway through and said, "Look, I'm good. I'm good here." I don't know.
I need to finish those. Like anytime I rent a movie or watch something on VOD or some streaming service, I need to finish it. Otherwise, it just keeps on popping up saying "resume this movie," even though I still have the end credits to go yet. It's like
I
it's
know.
it's like an OCD thing. I think I just got to finish it.
Just gotta finish the credits.
Yeah.
At any rate, as you can tell, we're very much stalling here in getting to Madam Web.
Let's just get the cynicism out of the way.
I guess we could just rip off the Band-Aid here, right? It's
Yeah.
directed by S.J. Clarkson, and I feel absolutely horrible for her. I think we can go ahead and lay this out on the table as well, because the reviews, as you all know, as we've been talking about, haven't been all that great, and people have been laying blame all over the place with this film.
Yeah.
But the one thing that is very, very clear is that there was a ton of studio interference with this.
I do not blame S.J. Clarkson on this one at all. So any negativity we're going to throw at this movie, and trust us, it's a lot. I don't want it to come off. That's why I say get the cynicism out of the way, because I don't want to make it seem like we're trashing her as a filmmaker or even as a talent. In fact, I'm not even sure what kind of talent she has yet, because I'm just not too familiar with her work, really outside of this movie and maybe some television that she has done. But I barely feel like I feel like I can't even count this as part of her work. Like I don't even think it's fair to.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not familiar with her at all. I don't think I've seen I haven't seen much of her TV work. I've seen Jessica Jones. I know she did a couple of episodes of that.
That I have seen. I know she did some episodes of The Defenders following that as well. I actually quite like Jessica Jones. I watched most of that entire show, so I know if I've seen episodes that S.J. Clarkson directed, I probably enjoyed them.
Yeah, for sure. Outside of that, I don't know if I've seen anything else of hers.
I think at one point she was actually tapped to direct the 4th Star Trek film before that got kind of pushed away.
Gotcha.
I think she was. I don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that she may have been tapped for that at one point.
She's done a fair amount of TV work, so she's been around for a while. This being her first feature, and
I feel so bad for her.
I felt terrible for her as well.
Yeah,
absolutely felt terrible for her as well. But yes, she technically directs this movie, quote unquote, but we actually know Sony directed this movie.
They did, yeah.
And it stars Dakota Johnson. And look, I got some pushback on this as well. I claimed her innocence with this. And the reason why, which we'll get into, I know I'm jumping the gun here a little bit. The performers here have absolutely zero to work with. Okay? So are the performances here great? No, they're not. But they've been given nothing. Absolutely nothing. So as far as I'm concerned, Dakota Johnson, wholly innocent. I don't think any of this is her fault either.
She showed up to work.
She showed up to work. Absolutely. And also, since we're talking about Sony already here, they changed the movie that they gave her initially, that she agreed to when she signed on the dotted line. It was a completely different movie, and they changed it up halfway through the process. I don't blame her for being perhaps a little cynical herself, whether it be on set or as everybody is talking about her on the press tour, maybe not raving over this movie.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
And look, if Brendan and I decided to get together to do a review, and Brendan told me, hey, look, we're going to review Inside Llewyn Davis. And I'd be like, yes, sign me up. I am there. Let's talk about Inside Llewyn Davis. And then the day of or the day before, he goes, you know what? We're changing it up. We're going to review Madam Web instead.
Just the absolute,
I would be a little upset.
Buzzkill that was. Like what a buzzkill.
I would be a little upset as well. I think when you look at it under that context, there's empathy to be had with why she feels that way and why she doesn't necessarily have to be out, raving this movie.
Well, yeah.
They changed it up on her.
That's in a weird way why I kind of appreciate her apathy during the press tour, because Sony needs to be called out for this. They really do. And while she's not saying Sony directly by name in that way, I'm glad that it's at least initiating that kind of perspective and that kind of conversation. So like, and while it is kind of disrespectful in presentation, I also kind of respect it. It's a weird thing. It's so like, I get it. I'm not gonna, I'm not supporting the behavior in a general sense, but in this case, I kind of am.
I agree. And unless I missed it, it could be out there. And admittedly, look, I have 2 children. I can't see everything.
Yeah.
I don't think she's gone out there and brazenly claimed that this is all Sony's fault. They butchered this movie. It's complete trash, and I hate Sony. Those are not words that she's been using to describe this movie.
Yeah, at least I haven't seen those words directly.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case either. She's very much held back. I'm sure she feels that way, and I'm sure at times she really wanted to articulate that.
Yeah.
But she didn't do that. She might have been a little apathetic, a little, I don't know about this movie at times.
A little cold.
A little distant from it. And I don't mind that.
She shot a web
given
and
the
swung
context
away.
of her experience with this movie.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we can talk more about that. But yes, Dakota Johnson is in this alongside Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Merced, Celeste O'Connor, Mike Epps, Tahar Rahim, Adam Scott, and a few others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with Madam Web,
there's a plot here.
Well, that's a great question. It says here, Cassandra Webb, how clever her name there.
Yeah.
Cassandra Webb.
Get the
is
other
a
B after that.
Extra B, yeah.
Yeah.
Cassandra Webb is a New York paramedic who begins to demonstrate signs of clairvoyance, forced to challenge revelations about her past. She needs to safeguard 3 young women from a deadly adversary who wants them destroyed.
That doesn't even sound like a plot synopsis. That just sounds like a character description.
Yeah, it's
that's wow. That actually that's very enlightening now. This movie just feels like a character description.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Brennan. How familiar are you with Madam Web, the character in the comics?
Very little, if at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty ignorant to this source. I mean, I know of the character by name and the tie to the Spider-Man mythology, or at least the New York of it all. But that's really the extent of it.
Okay, so I'm in the middle there. I am a little familiar with her in the comics. And when she is involved with Spider-Man, and yes, she's heavily involved in Spider-Man lore, I've always really liked the character in the comics. At least her relationship with Spider-Man, I always found very compelling.
Okay.
And I do understand to a degree why Sony wanted to make this movie. Now, admittedly, I would say a big chunk of their motivation is, hey, we have to keep making these movies or we'll lose the rights.
I mean, yeah, we'll talk about that.
So that is certainly some of it. Same thing with Kraven the Hunter, although similarly, Kraven is a compelling character. Can they make a whole movie out of it? We'll find out.
Oh, I hope that one works. I like the filmmaker. I like JC Chandor, and I love who's in that movie too.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But a very compelling character in the comics. And I would say the same thing about Madam Web in the comics. I really love the character and her relationship with Spider-Man. Now, my experience with her is primarily as a supporting device for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I love when she's there, but I've never interacted with her where it's about her exclusively or primarily, where she's the lead, if you will.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to make this work, but I do think the character has an appeal that, financial motivation aside, okay, I kind of like the idea. And then you get Dakota Johnson to play the character. On paper, that is interesting. I do like that. And And then you hire these writers, which they've been plastered everywhere. Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless and their work. It's plastered everywhere, their resume and how not great it is. And
Yeah, I've seen that.
when you hire these guys, like, I don't understand. I truly don't understand how they keep getting jobs. Maybe it's, that whole notion of it's who you know, not your skill set or what you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe they're Nepo babies. I don't know.
I mean, I think they just happen to be caught in the right situation at the right time.
The right web, if you will.
The right web. Exactly. Nice work. The right web. Because all of these films that they've been tied to, especially Madam Web, and we sort of talked about this with that quote unquote plot synopsis you laid out there.
Mm-hmm.
Their scripts are merely outlines. That's all they are. They probably wrote.
Let's read them real fast. Okay, so I have them here. Let's start with 2014, Dracula Untold. Not great.
Well,
they moved from that to The Last Witch Hunter. Wowzers. Gods of Egypt in 2016. Oh my God. Power Rangers. Okay. Power Rangers in 2017. I did like. It's not a great movie, but a good movie. I liked it.
I think the script was probably the worst part of it. I mean,
which is fair.
If anything, that movie had a good cast to maybe surpass some of those blemishes.
The screenplay, to your point, wasn't the biggest strength of that movie, but I did like it.
Yeah.
And then they did the aforementioned Morbius, blah. Now to Madam Web. Look, that is not a great resume. So the fact that they keep getting jobs, they have to know somebody. They have to be etched into the system in some sort of way. And I truly don't understand. But hey, look, if Hollywood is out there listening and you just want someone to write a terrible script, sign me up. I'll do it. I'll do it for half the price of these guys.
I would too. What's the common denominator of all these movies, though? Maybe aside from The Last Witch Hunter, I think you said it was, most of these were billed as franchise builders, right? Franchise starters, universes. Like these are properties that were trying to either start or progress or continue some type of universe. Now with Morbius and Madam Web, kind of part of this same Sony Spider-Verse thing, whatever the heck you want to call it. Yeah. And all these movies are just simple outlines to get the universe on its feet. Not well, and audiences are taking note, but
that's they're not J.J. Abrams.
They're at least say what you will about J.J. Abrams and his puzzle box mentality, but at least it gets people excited for what could potentially come next, right?
Yeah.
That's not what these movies are. Right? They don't succeed at doing that. They're merely bullet points for a franchise start or a franchise progression that no one really gives a crap about anymore. That's basically what this is.
Yep. Yeah, and I completely agree. It's striking that they keep getting jobs, but look, I will do it. I will do it for half the money. I can write a terrible script as well. So if you're listening, Sony, I'm available.
Wonder what they got paid for this. It makes me wonder.
A lot of money. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Which is why they're probably unmotivated. Sony keeps giving us large chunks of cash to write terrible scripts, and they don't care that we deliver a good product. If that was my gig, I wouldn't complain either. And clearly they're not. So
no, I guess they don't need to make the artistic venture work out for them.
No, it's
not their end goal
for the money. At any rate, I think we can start there with this actual conversation, Brendan, because the screenplay, if you can even call it that, to this movie is, well, as you noted, it's non-existent. It is one of the worst I have ever seen. The dialogue and the story, I truly, all joking aside, I don't know how that got approved. I don't know how Sony reads this and goes, yeah, that sounds good. Let's make that.
I mean, is this what happens? I mean, is this what it was on the page then? Is this what happens when there's so much interference mid-production that it just turns the movie into something like this? Because I tweeted that this movie feels like the first official wide release made by artificial intelligence, because
Yeah.
the script does genuinely feel like it was compiled by ChatGPT. It
It is.
has
It's bad.
like,
Really bad.
the dialogue feels so unnatural, but it's like the unfortunate reality is like it's not so bad that it's kind of funny. Like the incompetence of the writing and the presentation of it all. It's not like Tommy Wiseau's The Room, right? Which was so bad that it was actually entertaining and had a weird personality to it. Like
Yeah.
this movie doesn't even have that, which is what makes it even more unfortunate. There are at least two scenes I want to get to that were unintentionally hilarious. I'll get to those in a second. But yeah, like the script here is so incompetent. It's honestly kind of like worthy of praise. It's so in its own little bubble. I can't even describe it.
Yeah, it's butchered to hell for
Yeah.
sure. And maybe the problem here, because of the studio interference, obviously that's a big part of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
But the editing, I truly don't know what's going on here with the editing. It is an enigma.
Yeah.
Whoever edited this, and maybe you're right, maybe it was AI that decided to edit this movie. Truly, none of it makes any sense. It is incoherent, utterly bewildering, and flat out obtuse. It's some of the worst editing I've ever seen, and not just in terms of getting us from scene to scene or what's taking place in the scene, but when you go to further crafts, specifically the sound editing in this film is atrocious in ways that is really hard to describe. It is absolutely awful. And
yeah.
it's
One thing in
going to show
particular.
up most prominently in some of the ADR. I felt
yep.
terrible
For Tahir Rahim.
Rahim.
Oh my gosh.
He's a great actor. A
Yeah.
prophet. Oh my God. So good.
So good.
So
So
good.
good.
He's a phenomenal actor. The dialogue he is forced to deliver here on its own, going back to the script writing, is it's redundant, it's dumb, it adds very little value to the film. It's just nonsensical. And then you add in, for whatever reason, all the ADR that he is forced to do, and it is quite significant here.
Yeah.
And the editing of it is, again, like, it's so bad. And this is a Sony product. Okay, You're talking about one of the bigger studios in Hollywood. If this was an independent studio who just didn't have the funds, and really struggled to put the sound editing and mix.
Oh yeah, we might be
and
less
for-
cynical
for-
about
like,
it.
I understand, right?
Yeah.
I get that. I just watched George Washington last week.
Oh
and
yeah, David Gordon Green.
similarly, like the mix and the editing of that film, it's not great. But that was a film made for like $7, I think. Like it was made on for nothing. So you watch that and you accept that this is a really low budget indie, and you just kind of go with it, and it's really great. This is a Sony Marvel product.
Mm-hmm.
And they treated this film from a craft perspective like it was some sort of student project.
Well, they clearly didn't care. They clearly didn't care.
Not care. And the sound mix and the editing here is it is again, I don't know how it got approved, how it got greenlit.
And it's so unfortunate because while there is this like real lack of motivation in Tahir Rahim's character as the quote unquote villain here, like that actually could have been potentially interesting. I mean, his motivation is simply, I had a vision that these three girls were going to kill me, so I want to kill them. That's it. That's his arc. There's a lot of possibility to play with that. There's room. There's room to have a little bit of fun with that. But this film does not. It's not even worth criticizing this film for what it could have been.
That's true. I know it is. I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing really to say here because it's really bad. But I agree that idea fundamentally is interesting. But all he says throughout the film is,
I'm going to
follow
get them.
I'm going to get them. They need to die.
And of
He
course, they
says like
have.
4 lines throughout this whole movie.
I mean,
Just repeats
he probably. Oh yeah, I mean, he in totality, he probably speaks at least 500 times, but it's all some variation of those 4 lines, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, how convenient that he has like this right hand woman that has like the perfect amount of like digital artificial intelligence at her hands to be able to like facially recreate people. So it's like,
A
oh,
little bit
okay,
Dark Knight Rises
a
action.
little bit of that. Yeah, exactly. So so maybe this movie was made by AI. The fact that it was almost like a product in its own movie. So okay, guess that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, it takes place in 2003. And so, yeah, he says something at the beginning of the film like the NSA has this new technology, wink, wink. And it's all of this digital
I
surveillance.
forgot this took place in 2003.
Yeah. So, again, I don't mind that because of the period setting and how that technology had evolved at that time. But the film doesn't do anything interesting with it.
No.
And essentially, it just becomes a device to get us from one scene to the next. The film doesn't make any sort of commentary on it.
Really, the only reason why this movie takes place in 2003, and I don't know if it's a spoiler to say, I mean, he's in the movie credited as Ben Parker, Adam Scott. The only reason why it takes place in 2003 is to take place at the time of the birth of Peter Parker. That's the whole point of it. That's the only reason why it takes place in 2003.
Yep. That's what it's leading to. It is a prequel of sorts to Peter.
To which Peter? To Tom Holland's Peter?
I assume Tom Holland, because that would line up ish. I haven't done the math, but that kind of makes sense to me too. When
I guess, yeah, because
by the time Civil War comes out, he'd be a teenager if he was born in 2003.
He'd be about 13 if we consider 2016 to be the present day timeline for Civil War. But I mean, I guess it works out closer than saying it's Tobey Maguire or anyone else.
Yeah, because Tobey Maguire would already be swinging throughout New York at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't
cover getting bogged down by the mathematics and the timelines of Spider-Man just to not defend, but to analyze the 2003 setting here.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully assumed that it was referring to Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Yeah.
And again, I think it's a little young. Because, how old is Peter in Civil War? He's probably closer to 16 or 17.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but,
whatever. Whatever.
Of all of the issues of this film, I can live with that.
That is not one of them.
I can live with that. And honestly, I don't really mind that he's Ben Parker because the Tom Holland MCU version of the character, they reference Uncle Ben, but obviously we don't get the backstory. And I do love that he's just thrown in here as a character without giving us any of that conventional lore that comes with Uncle Ben. He's just a character, and who
just happens to be Ben Parker. That's really all it is. He just happens
to be Ben Parker, exactly. And you see the birth at the end of the film. He's still alive. He's still there. So like, it's just an iteration of the character we really haven't seen in film before. And I do appreciate that about the film.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do like that he's just thrown in there as a character, even though we've seen him before. He's just a supporting vehicle here.
Yeah, he is.
And is a friend of Miss Cassandra.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I do appreciate that the film doesn't handhold us with any of that information. And given the rest of the screenplay, I'm kind of surprised it doesn't. I'm honestly shocked it
probably forgot who Ben Parker really was at one point.
And he disappears for large chunks of this movie.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
If only the chemistry between the 4 women here were actually kind of interesting, but the script doesn't allow them to do any favors with that. Because they're rattled with just AI related dialogue, not even related dialogue. It sounds like it was generated by AI. So when the 3 young girls are all just in the woods waiting for Cassandra to come back and they're just talking to each other, there's such an awkward energy to it. And I can't blame these performers, because when you're rattled with that kind of script and that kind of dialogue, of course it's going to be awkward. Like there's no way around it. And that's really ultimately how it comes off. The scene that made me laugh the most in this movie And it's the one moment, well, I mean, there's really two moments, but this is the one moment in particular where I thought, okay, this is now so bad, it's kind of funny. It's a simple one. It's the moment where Cassandra is basically teaching the three of them CPR and chest compressions.
Yeah.
It's like she says, okay, do it this way. 1, 2, 3. Now you come in. 1, 2, 3. And they're like, oh, you're such a good teacher. It's like she did literally nothing to teach you guys.
It's so bad.
And it's like,
It's
and then
so
of course
bad.
we're sitting there thinking, well, that's not going to be the last time we see this come up in this movie.
No,
of course, they're
it's
going to have to
obvious.
save her life at some
Yes,
point
of
doing the same
course.
thing. But it's like, that's the one moment where I thought, okay, this is getting kind of funny. This is getting a little bit funny. Okay, but then it kind of loses itself again. But yeah.
And look, I do hope that people are able to laugh with this movie. I've seen some of that commentary on social media that this is one of those, it's so extremely bad that I loved every second of it because it was so funny and goofy and cheesy and tacky.
I wish I was there. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, I think the movie's too banal to get to that
I
point, though,
agree.
overall.
I agree. I simply couldn't have much fun with the film.
Yeah.
And maybe it comes down to the sincerity that the film is trying to have. And I could see that why the failure of that would be funny, but
Yeah.
I admittedly struggled with it. I
Yeah, I
mostly
did
just
too.
found it awkward in a way that left me completely unengaged with the film. Just
Yeah, I was so
and I
disconnected.
wasn't. I walked in knowing that this was going to be bad. I had already seen the reviews and but it's still, even having that in mind, I couldn't really get with it. And I think it comes down to moments like that when they have to say lines like, "Oh, you're such a good teacher." She does absolutely nothing in it. It is really, really bad writing. Or even with Cassie herself, she's forced to be this cold, soulless character at the beginning of the film for reasons that are not clear until way later on in the film.
Right.
And by then, it's too late. And then you get this whole backstory with her mom that is completely unearned. It is so bad.
That was the other part of the movie where I thought, okay, this is probably going to be so bad it's funny. It's actually the opening prologue between her mom and Tahir Rahim. Like their dialogue and just the performance of it is like, wow, this is so awkward. Oh my gosh. And then we transition to, I don't want to say present day, but 2003.
Yeah.
And then there's just such a banality to it. And that kind of self-seriousness in it all. It's so self-serious, but not self-serious enough to really add like this unintentional playful energy to it, or at least a little bit of personality. And say what you will about a lot of bad movies these days, but a little personality goes a long way. And that's what this does not have. Like a movie like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, not a good movie.
Yeah.
But there are at least moments there I'm going to remember. For better and for worse, there's at least a little bit of personality to that movie.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. This just doesn't have that.
No, I completely agree. And again, fundamentally, I like what's there. That whole idea of her mom and feeling like she was abandoned because she didn't have the right proper context. And then she learns what that is. And it's this big emotional epiphany. I love that idea on paper, but in execution here, it is so excruciating to watch. It is really bad. And I couldn't laugh at it. But for those that could, I envy you. I really wish that I could come around on that. But it's terrible. And then it leads to that final action beat at the end, which is
under a giant Pepsi Cola sign. Yeah.
Incredibly drab. Oh yeah. And she's holding a Pepsi can basically in front of the camera at one point going, I couldn't have a beer, but I got this instead.
It's like Mark Wahlberg's not here to show us a Bud Light, so we've got this soda here instead.
It's almost that bad. Yeah, it's almost that bad.
I will admit, if I had some alcohol before seeing this, and I went with a group of people,
maybe that's the way to watch this.
I could have found some unintentional joy with the mess that this was. But seeing it by myself, sober, maybe that was the difference. Maybe that was the difference.
Yeah, maybe seeing it with a crowd that is really in tune with the
badness of it.
Just the the false humor that could come along with this movie. My crowd seemingly felt the way that I did, where everyone was just awkward and quiet and could feel this palpable tension and just wanted to leave immediately, even though nobody did. Like it's because it's seemingly that was my crowd. But if I watched this with people that were laughing along and could point out what about it made it so funny to them, I think I could have a good time with it, especially if you drinks in as you're talking about. But
but sadly, you can tell Sony they didn't care about this product, and the big
didn't care.
piece of evidence, piece of evidence too, this movie does not have a post-credit scene.
No, they don't care. They wanted to abandon this as quickly as possible. Yeah. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't follow Zaslav's lead and just write it off. I'm glad that they didn't do that, because I don't think movie studios should be doing that. No, but this is really, really bad. I could
this is not the product of artists. That's the difference.
They did not care. Yeah. I don't even. I truly don't know why they released this film as it is.
No, and this is why I want to be careful with how badly we're dumping on this movie, because I do think there is potential for S.J. Clarkson to do something that she genuinely wants to make and to make it her own. And that's not this movie. This is probably something very different than, let's say, what Zaslav did with Batgirl or Coyote versus Acme, because from what I understood by sources around those movies, there was at least passion and a drive to make a good product with those. And I did not get that sense here. So it's ironic that this is the one we still get, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that kind of leads to maybe our final bullet point on this, and then we can get out of here.
Yeah.
There was a lot of conversation on social media around Chris Stuckman's review of this, or at least this clip that was going around, which in context, if you watch the whole video, it's much more than the clip.
Yeah.
But in the clip, he was essentially talking about the context in which this film was made, which was interpreted by many as, oh, he's making excuses for the movie. And there's this lack of criticizing when it comes to maybe these big studio movies.
I think, sadly, there's a certain subset of film fans out there that want to see YouTube critics especially maintain this sense of like arrogance and cynicism, like a lot of them still do. And, you know, a lot of them who have that, that's fine. That's their audience and that's how they get their views and their business running, then all power to them. But Chris Stuckman is someone that deliberately pushed himself away from that because he now is a part of, I don't want to say the system, but he is making a movie now. And he doesn't want to play that game anymore. He's even stopped doing top 10 worst lists like he used to back in the day. And I kind of respect him for that. And I think there is a subset of people who maybe used to be fans of his that don't like that he's apparently gone soft, if that's the way to put it. And I do think there's a softness to the way that he talks about it in that clip that maybe people are just not hoping for when it comes to a movie like this. I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors there, but you know, that clip, even out of context, I don't really think is saying anything that bad. I get where he's coming from.
And I don't think that it has to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
Because what he is saying, I do think is right in the sense that, yes, the people involved with this film, especially S.J. Clarkson and Dakota Johnson, this whole cast and crew, they were backed into a corner because of corporate decisions. And they made a lot of changes on the fly. There was a ton of studio interference, and that is going to make your job impossible. And you couple that with the overarching mentality from Sony, and that they just did not care. They didn't care how good this was.
Nope.
And
not at all.
It is extremely evident in the quality that you get. And again, it's everything. It's the direction of the film. It's especially the writing, especially the editing, the sound design of it. The performances, of course, become a victim of all of that. They just didn't care. There
Yeah.
are very few, very, very few redeeming qualities to this film. They just wanted to push it out and get it to theaters.
Can you think
And,
of any redeeming qualities? We didn't really talk about the things
well-
that we actually might have liked here.
We can get to that here in a second because I don't
Okay.
want to lose my train of thought.
Oh, sorry.
But there are maybe a few things that we can talk about. My point in all of that is to say that, yes, the production of the film is not great. And I think Stuckman makes some great points.
Agreed.
However, I think that can be true, and that there's, and I understand Stuckman's kind of where he's heading with his career, that he doesn't want to necessarily delve into this. And I think that's
and I get it. I get it.
perfectly fine, because I do think there's validity on the other side of the coin, in the sense that you can recognize that S.J. Clarkson and her cast and crew were put into a corner. That doesn't mean that the film is above criticism.
Right.
And
Right.
certainly we came into this full on going to criticize the movie. So you recognize that these artists were not able to put any effort into this film. But as a result, the film in a vacuum on its own terms, it's really bad. It's terrible.
But
It's-
that's
it's
the
one
thing.
of the worst I've seen.
It's not that the film is above criticism or anything like that. You could still criticize a film negatively as well, but still do it in a way that doesn't criticize the wrong people. There's a different subset of criticism here. Like we've sometimes criticized movies because we think they're made poorly by artists, right? And we talk about, oh, this movie's just poorly directed. What was X person thinking? But criticism in this case, it's really more about the system that made it. And it just led to the badness of this creation. And it's like we're getting, I feel like we're at least trying to get to the heart of why this movie does not work. And at least still maintain a sense of sympathy for those who were forced to still make it. And
exactly.
that's
It's
the
both.
difference. Yeah. It's not just, oh, it's good. Oh, it's bad. There are more layers here to peel back to get to the reason why. And sometimes it's not on the artists.
I completely agree. And if I was a filmmaker, if I was like a Chris Stuckman and, hey, I'm going to transition into the business itself, I don't know if I would feel comfortable getting in front of the camera and then just bashing colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
I could understand why he chooses not to do that as much anymore.
Yeah.
And so for me, it goes both ways. I think he makes a lot of great points.
I agree.
There's merit to what he's saying, and simultaneously to those counter arguing him, the film is not above criticism. It absolutely should be bashed, because what Sony does here is not okay.
Sony
It's
must be
just not
stopped.
okay.
They must be stopped. I thought we were beyond this. I thought since Spider-Man 3, I thought we were beyond this crap.
I truly cannot believe they released this as it is. It feels like like a rough draft, like the first version of whatever this is. And they said, nah, that's fine. Just put it.
You're still giving it too much credit.
It's just, at any rate, I think that'll be it. I guess you wanted to talk about some redeeming qualities.
There are not many.
Not many at all. And I don't even know if I would say this is a redeeming quality, but one thing that I did kind of appreciate, and admittedly, it could be that everything else was so egregiously calamitous that this one little thing stuck out, and maybe to a point where it's not as good as I'm going to give it credit for, but it stuck out like a sore thumb to me. But there are times where it appears that Tahar Rahim, when he's in the suit and it's just a stationary shot on him, it's practical. Like he's in that suit walking around. And that felt a little refreshing, because everything is so CGI now. I mean, even with the MCU.
It's sad that the establishing shots of this character in the suit are the only ones that do that, but at least there is a brief moment of tactility there.
Yeah, there's a brief moment. And even when it does get to the CGI and the movement of the character, the mechanics of it are
kind of interesting. I just wish they were more in camera.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the stuff in camera.
Oh,
When
okay.
he's
okay.
moving in camera, the mechanics of it are not the way we're accustomed to CGI now,
Yeah.
and especially the way the MCU does it. The CGI and the mechanics of his movements is actually more in line with the Raimi movies.
That's fair.
And
Yeah.
I do kind of appreciate that
Kind of
tactility,
throwbacky kind of
that
neat.
kind of throwback
Yeah.
movements and style. And there, people have noted this on social media now. There is one shot at the end of the film that is straight a ripoff, straight stolen from the Raimi movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I will
so
say
it kind of makes sense that in a way this is a little bit of a nod to the Raimi Spider-Man films with some of its movement and tactility.
Yeah, and there are some sequences on the subway when we first see him that way where I thought, okay, like I wish it was more in camera in some of those sequences, but the way he moved was, again, it looked fake, but there was potential for creativity in the quickness of it. And I kind of wish there was more dedicated to that.
Yeah, like him crawling on the ceiling in the subway is aesthetically and mechanically more in line with the way you would see Maguire's Spider-Man do that,
Sure.
not the Tom Holland character.
Yeah, absolutely. I also will say I like Adam Scott in this, but again, it's kind of hard to dislike him. He's if there's one actor here that's able to make this dialogue, I don't want to say work, but at least make you think about it less. It's him. It's him. I feel like he's the one saving grace performatively that doesn't suck. That's the best thing I could say. He doesn't suck. He's at least charming at times.
I agree. No, I think he's very good. He's funny. He doesn't have a lot to do here, but I guess that would be the other thing that I do appreciate here, as we mentioned earlier.
I wonder how many times he just went off script, and that's why he was good.
I wouldn't be surprised if he did that at least a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like him, and I appreciate that the film isn't hiding the fact that he's Ben Parker.
Yeah.
And that Peter is being born here. I mean, they speak to it. At one point, there's even a gag, a joke about what are we going to name the baby? And they don't come out and flat out say it, but we all know who it is. So like, I do kind of appreciate that element of it. And I feel terrible because here I am talking about two of the male characters of the film when it's supposed to be about Cassandra and Julia and Anya and Maddie. Like that's our central group here that I really wanted to like. I really wanted to like, and at times I do. Like Sydney Sweeney especially, I think is quite charming and funny here.
She's probably I'd say she's the standout of the four.
She's easily the standout for me of the three teenagers.
Yeah.
The problem is, and again, that's why I started off, especially with Dakota Johnson, but I think it comes down to the other three as well.
Yeah.
The script and what they're able to work with. The reason I think Adam Scott jumps out, and maybe you're right in that he's making up lines as he goes, which anything he does in that regard is going to be better than what's on the page.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
But he's also limited. He's restricted. So he doesn't have as much to chew on in terms of the main dialogue. So
right.
that limited factor is going to make whatever blemishes that are there smaller. Dakota Johnson is carrying the weight of the movie as well as these other three. So, and because they have so much to do here, they have to delve into this really crappy dialogue, and it's nobody can make that
so
work.
bad
Nobody
for
can
them.
make
I
that
feel
work.
so bad for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're not given anything to do, and it's the writing, everything around them is just so bad.
It's a bad
so yeah, I
movie.
feel terrible. I feel terrible for them.
Wow, we spent
it's
50
not
minutes talking about this movie. I did not expect that.
I didn't either. At any rate, I think I could be done there. I don't really have much else to say.
Oh, sadly, yeah, we hate this movie, but it's sad why we hate it. It's a sad day. It's a sad day. This movie just makes me sad given those circumstances.
I agree.
Yeah.
If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here, you can reach out to us. Let us know. Leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. You can leave a comment on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at InSessionFilm. Just reach out to us. You can always email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com as well. But yeah, we would definitely love to hear from you.
Yeah.
If you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, please rate and review us on those platforms. We really do appreciate it. And I think that's it. Brennan, am I missing anything?
I'll just say once again, S.J. Clarkson, we do not blame you. We don't blame you on this.
Yeah, I think that's a good final thought. Once again, all of the finger pointing that I've seen on social media should all be pointing back to one thing.
Yeah.
And that is the 4-letter S word.
Shit.
That, that one, but it rhymes with pony.
Sorry, I had to do it.
So, yeah.
I think all of our listeners would have been thinking it, so I just thought I'd get it out of the way.
Yeah, the other 4-letter S word, they didn't care. This film did not make any money at the box office, just huge bomb.
Yeah.
Why go through all of that effort to just not care and release this quality? Like, you know that you're going to lose a ton of money doing this?
We say this a lot, JD. When things like this happen, not this particular situation, but certain situations like it, I would love to be a fly on the wall during these boardroom meetings about this movie. I would love to hear what these conversations were about. They'd probably make me even madder, but I would love to hear what's going on behind the scenes.
I would love to know as well.
Yeah.
According to this, the film cost $80 million.
Okay.
80 to $100 million was the budget for this.
Okay.
And the box office right now is 51 million-ish.
Yeah.
And there was some marketing for this. I don't know how much, but certainly some, so you got to throw that in there as well. I mean, this film is not going to make its money back. It's not even going to come close.
No.
So
it's gonna sink by next weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Drive Away Dolls is gonna overtake it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Robot Dreams came out next weekend, it would beat Madam Web.
Hey, it might be number 1 at the box office. Another animation story right there.
Yeah. At any rate.
Yeah.
That's Madam Web. Don't go see it. If you have, I'm sorry. Or I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it much more than we did.
Yeah, I hope you had fun. Whatever the circumstances were, maybe you had some liquid courage, saw it with the right people, but hopefully you enjoyed it more than we did.
Yep. So anyway, that's Madam Web. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast. Dakota Johnson deserves better.
Sony.